Did you know you can advertise on podcasts?
Don't act like you're not impressed.
Find out more at podvertise.com.au. That's podvertise with an s.com.au.
Hi guys, Tommy Bugg here, ready to go for the Unlaced podcast with JBD. Make sure you tune in and looking forward to everyone listening.
Tommy Bugg, he's finally here.
Mate, absolute pleasure. It's been long awaited, so I'm glad to be on the show.
I know, I've been asking you since before I think we started the podcast, and it all stemmed back from a walk we did 2 months ago, probably in the first lockdown around Albert Park Lake. And for those that don't know Albert Park Lake in Melbourne, it's a 4.2k kind of distance. And the conversation was that good, we walked 2 laps.
I know, it's funny. I don't think we'd caught up with each other for a long time before that. I'd been traveling and you'd been doing your own stuff too. So yeah, we obviously went around it, and then we were just like, this. We're actually laughing about it being a podcast. That's how much topics we covered and memories we ran over. So it was good. I'm glad that sparked it, mate. I've been a keen listener since. So.
Appreciate it. No, it was. It's funny. We said at the end of it, I'm like, mate, imagine if this was recorded on a podcast. I'm sure people would listen in. It was freaking fascinating. And even more fascinating is probably your journey over the past few years. And like me and most of your circle, we always knew you as Tommy Bugg, the footballer, the AFL footballer who was bound for stardom. And then I guess you took a bit of a U-turn and had a change of heart at a young age, which we'll obviously go through in a lot more detail. But to give some context now of what you're doing, you're now a CEO of a social media agency that's absolutely booming, on a local and global scale, which is insane. So, how's the change of pace been for you?
Yeah, it's exciting for me. I mean, I'm a very fast-paced person, as you probably know, and a lot of people that know me close. I like to be stimulated. I like things to challenge me. So from a footy point of view, definitely for my early part of my life, it was always challenging because that challenge was to reach AFL. So the goal didn't get reached until I was 18. So, ever since I started playing when I was 6 to 18, it's like that 12-year build-up of really putting everything into trying to get drafted. So, yeah, there was so much that we'll obviously delve into exactly, piece by piece, but to go from kind of AFL footy and then have a bit of a U-turn and go into what I'm doing now, I get a lot more fulfillment out of what I do now versus, what I was doing when I was playing.
Yeah. The thing that I love about it, and I do want to go back to, I guess, the start of the whole journey, but the thing I love about it is what you have done is very, I guess, not best practice of what people are told to do from a professional sporting standpoint. Like, you're at the peak of your powers and you walked away from it, which is just golden.
Yeah. I know, it sounds funny, doesn't it? At the age of 25, retiring. But I guess, what I saw was I made some very calculated decisions. I think from the outside, it probably looked like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like, he's literally gone off the rails. A lot of people would look at that, but all my decisions have been calm and calculated throughout the journey, even though they may have not seemed like it. And I think important for me, I've had some really strong mentors and, some people around me which have guided me through those decisions. And looking back now, I literally would not change one bit. I know there's some lessons I learned along the way and, some mishaps, but I really do take away all the positives from, my learnings in the past.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. So I do want to go back to where we met. And for those that don't know how Tommy and I met, we actually both went to Caulfield Grammar. Actually missed each other though at school because I went to Caulfield Grammar year 7 to 9 and then left to go to the AIS, and then you moved down from Pakenham into the boarding school of Caulfield Grammar, which must have been a bit of a big decision. Was that orientated around footy at the time when you did that?
Yeah. So how that happened is, you play your state level football. So yeah, obviously, I come from Pakenham Upper. I was at a private school out there, which was very comfortable. But in terms of, challenging myself, in terms of being outside my comfort zone, not enough, not enough. So, I played state footy in 15s, and then from there, basically what happens is a lot of the private schools and the APS, AGS schools come in and they basically scout players to come to their school. So I entered, with that, I had Barry Rawlings, who, is still involved with Caulfield Grammar now, a great person and a great mentor of mine throughout my younger journey. And he basically, approached my dad and my mum, and, he was super personable. I think that's what the key was, especially with my parents, and how I am. I'm relationships based. So it's all about, people investing in you and kind of, that vibe you get. And Barry went to extreme lengths in that regard. So, I had a couple of decisions. I think it came down to Caulfield, St. Kev's, and Carey Grammar at the time, which I was interested in all of them. But Caulfield just felt right. It just felt, I like the co-ed setup too. Like, I was never interested in, an all boys school. It wasn't for me. Not in that sense, but I just like, I've grown up with sisters. I've grown up with females in my life, and I love.
I agree. It's not natural. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So that was a big thing, and then obviously, they had a great footy program. And I guess at the end of the day, it seemed like too good of an opportunity not to pass up. But as you mentioned, I came to the school as you left, but we basically hung out with the same friendship group. So it was inevitable that we're going to cross paths. I day schooled for the first year. The craziest thing about my Caulfield journey is I day schooled for the first year. I worked it out. I spent 700 hours on a fucking train from Pakenham.
No way.
To Ripponlea station, Ripponlea to South Yarra, Ripponlea, got off, walked up. So I did that every day. And it was just a nightmare. Like, I remember my first month, I was just like, going home, wouldn't talk to anyone. I literally wouldn't talk to anyone. Wouldn't talk to my parents because I blame them for sending me there.
Exhausted.
But it was a good experience. When I walked in, I remember my first day, Lockie Kellogg very well. Hopefully he's listening. Shout out to Lock. But
shout out, Lockie.
I walked in day and he's just, an amazing person, and he kind of just took me under his wing, and a very likable guy too. So he introduced me to everyone, and, and then I just fell in love with the school, and then obviously, I ended up boarding year 11, year 12 just because it was easier on me. But just in regards to a school, some of my fondest memories are at Caulfield Grammar.
No, definitely. It's definitely the case that you turned into the stallion of the school, safe to say. I feel like I left Caulfield as like, Seb Gotch would challenge me on this, but, the sporting sort of future, had sort of like the pressure of, he's going to make it and this, that. And then I came back from the AIS. I used to come back all the time, see parents and stuff, but I came back and I came to watch the first footy. Caulfield were playing Melbourne Grammar, and I hadn't really ever watched first footy since I'd left the school, but it was around now all my mates in our year level were playing for the first team, and first footy at APS is like, it's a fucking big deal. It's life or death, and like the best players that are playing AFL now have probably played APS at some point. But I came back and I didn't know who Tommy Bugg was, but he was wearing this helmet, like a protective helmet, and he had the biggest afro you will ever see, to the point the helmet wasn't actually protecting his head. It was just covering his hair.
I could probably get it up pretty quick.
Yeah, please do, because, the afro you had back in high school was almost like a bit of a cult figure.
It was funny because I did have an afro, but when I got to Caulfield, I cut it. Like, they said to me, you can't have hair like that. Yeah. So in my old school, if your hair didn't drop below your eyebrows and didn't touch your collar, you were sweet. So this is at my old school.
Oh, that's golden.
So you see that, and I got away with it because it doesn't go over my eyebrows and doesn't touch my collar. As soon as I got to Caulfield, it's, they make it
attention.
Yeah, so it's it has to be neat and tidy. That's their what's it called? That's their criteria around it. So I rocked up first day to do a little induction with Barry Rawlings, and he basically looked at me straight away and just said, "Are you going to need a haircut?" And I was just like, "Fuck!" I just had a haircut. It was already short as I wanted to go. So it was funny. Everyone used to see me as big hair, but I really had that big hair back in year 7, 8.
It always pissed me off that with Caulfield, because that was the only way I used to get detentions, was because of my hair. But going back to this game, it was a pretty big game at the time. And for those that know footy, playing for Melbourne Grammar that day was Fletcher Roberts, who's now retired also, but was a Western Bulldogs premiership player, and Stephen May, who's arguably probably the best defender in the AFL at the moment. And Tommy Bugg, I didn't know who he was, but everyone kind of talked him up as, he's the new footy superstar, he's boarding, he's going to get drafted, or he's about to go to the Greater Western Sydney Giants because they're allowed people in like the pre-draft. And you kicked 4 goals by half-time. Like, genuinely made it look so easy. And I'm like, this guy's an absolute jet. And then on the other side of those goals, it was just like you and Stephen May were just going at each other. And I don't know what it was that happened, but the umpire like kind of sent you both off. it's like you got sin binned, which I didn't even know could happen.
Yeah, it was interesting because obviously if you watched any of my footy, you know that I like to get in people's faces and niggle a bit. That was just my style of play. But with Stephen May, he didn't take shit, so he basically dropped me straight away. And then I didn't even know the umpires at APS level. I won't go into it. They're not great. And basically he's ragdolled me, and I've been sent off too. But it's funny when you look back now and see some of the players you play against that have gone on to play AFL. It's pretty special.
Yeah, no, it is. And before I go into, I guess, how you got drafted into the Giants, we always had a pretty unique connection, I felt, because we never went to school together, but we bonded pretty well pretty quickly. And I always used to come home for periods and you were always there and around, and we became that close that we actually joined our 18th birthdays together. And I think part of it was because we didn't have enough mates individually to have a big party. We thought, well...
Well, we had the same mates.
Yeah, well, let's run with that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that was funny because we probably only knew each other for 6 months or so. Like, it wasn't like, we had a very, very strong relationship. We got along very, very well. And, obviously we threw it with our families and our families.
You know what that was? That was like a tactical business decision we both made to maximize the event. We thought, let's just join them together. We were always thinking back then.
I remember that like yesterday. I really do.
No, it was a good time. But as your sort of year 12 year ended, you got picked up by the GWS Giants, which I think at that time was a brand new footy franchise. So they hadn't played a year of AFL then, had they?
Nah. So I think I was in year 11 when I found out, to be honest. I think, latter stages of year 11. I just got a call. I probably kept it pretty hush. I didn't really tell anyone because I think it was fairly confidential. But yeah, it was just, for me, it was amazing. Like, I always wanted to play AFL, and, everyone says, if you could pick, where would you go? You wouldn't want to go to the Giants, but I was just super grateful and just, so excited to start my journey. And, it really meant that I didn't, for year 12, because I love footy so much at the time at Caulfield, it meant that I didn't have to play state. And I didn't have to play,
awesome.
And I didn't have to play Gippsland Power either. Even though I loved playing those, again, like some great memories with those clubs. With school footy, the worst thing was just you'd play a whole season, but half your good players would come out each throughout the year, and they'd play state league, they'd play Australia, and then it wouldn't be a true reflection of who actually wins the premiership that year. So In year 12, I was just so happy that I got to play every single game for Caulfield.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's funny, just to tap into that a little bit, at the Seb Gotch story of turning down going to play for Vic Metro or go to a trials because he loved playing for Caulfield so much. He kicked 8 against Wesley at Wesley, and then saw the Vic scouts there and told him where to go, which was probably why he never got drafted himself. But we'll let him come on the podcast and explain that. But you went to the Giants, which obviously you found out quite early, probably a year and a half before you actually got drafted to the club. But can you explain to us what it was like to be a Giant in the early days, moving to a new city, a part of Sydney where that's just not known for footy? What was it like? What was it like through that period?
It was definitely strange because you have this vision of, or you have this expectation of what's a footy club, what's an AFL club. So, when I went up there, it wasn't, nothing was really different. I mean, it felt a bit like a footy camp. And we obviously had a lot of young guys. So the guys that got drafted to the club, I think 30 of them were like 18. So, and it was all guys I'd either played with or played against. So it generally felt like a footy camp. So it was interesting. We lived together. We used to go to train, come home. The club would pretty much, the way it's set up, all your meals were pretty much paid for the whole week. So we'd all eat at a restaurant together. Then we'd go home. Me and Toby Green would play hours and hours of FIFA. We had punch-ons, me and Toby, over who was better at FIFA. I've still got some videos actually, which I might share with you offline. But just some funny stuff. It was just basically young guys just, going up there and just trying to, we had Mark Williams, Choco Williams coaching us at the time, and Kevin Sheedy. And Mark was Choco was super important for me because I was also like a niggler, like I said before, but he really said to me, like, don't take shit from anyone. And I took that, on board fairly heavily. And I just applied that in everything I did. So training, games, I was just ultra competitive, and I owe a lot of that to him. But in regards to what was like just in a different city, like, I loved it. I mean, the first year or so was a bit weird just because you're trying to play as many games as possible. But once we really settled in Sydney, it's an amazing city. It's an amazing city, and it's got so much to offer. And I think the guys up there now, you'll see that they actually love living in Sydney rather than down here in Melbourne.
Yeah, a lot of those core players, like the top players that have been pivotal in that whole club's history, haven't left.
Yeah.
But do you? I mean, the first few years were pretty tough on the field. I mean, they were definitely, I would say, character building rather than you got smashed, because I don't think anyone expected a bunch of 18-year-old, although they were the elite in that year of drafting or the first few years of drafts, I don't think anyone thought you were going to sort of make the top 8 and be a finals chance.
Yeah, I think that the main thing was the club was it was so well prepared. They really, everything from Dave Matthews to Sheedy to Leon Cameron, Tony Shepard, these type of guys, they really instilled the story into us. So it wasn't, you don't have to win the premiership year one. It was more, guys, let's just build a really good culture. Let's build really good training habits. Let's get some great people in. We had James McDonald, Luke Power, Callum Ward, Tom Scully, Phil Davis, who else? James McDonald, I don't know if I already mentioned him or not, Chad Corns, Dean Brogan, these type of guys. Right. They were super important for us because we come in little arrogant 18-year-olds and they just put us back in our spot, which is good. It created a bit of, it created some competitiveness, which is ultimately what we needed to have.
Yeah.
And then, as we saw slow progression, I think that was the key. Each year we saw slow progression, which was, if you're building towards something special, as long as you can see growth.
Yeah.
And I think that's the main.
Yeah, because you started getting some wins. I remember, I think I was in Adelaide for one game when I was playing there. Me and my old man, we came and watched you play at the old Amy Stadium, which is pretty awesome. I think you guys got up that day and it was like, you could feel like it was starting to shift and you guys started to see some light at the end of the tunnel. But you had a really good period at the Giants. I mean, you played 60 plus games. You were a core part of the early years when it was like an elite young group. Do you have any, I guess, early experiences back then of just some of the best moments of your AFL journey, like on the field, off the field?
Yeah, it's interesting. I probably got my AFL journey had different, sequences. I guess I got the Giants chapter, and then I've got Melbourne chapter, and then I've got Carlton chapter. For my Giants chapter, I guess, for the first few years, I was just stoked to play, just to get a game. I just knew that if I was at any other club, I was 69 kilos when I walked into the club. I wouldn't have played anywhere, no matter how well I played, just because I was too small. And at these other clubs, it's all about building a body and building a base and then, having longevity in the sport. So I was just G'd to play and just so happy, you get match payments as well. So you're getting paid more than normal. So you're just really happy to play. But in terms of great memories, it's really hard I think the first win was amazing. Sorry, the first game to be picked in the first game. I mean, I broke my knuckle, funny enough, in a practice game 2 weeks before. I was just wrestling with some guy and I punched him in the stomach. In the punched him in the chest here. And I broke my knuckle. And it was I don't know if you've broken a knuckle before, but it was the most painful thing ever. And I got off the field and Choco ripped me. He's just like, you're a dickhead. What are you doing? You got to, the round 1 in a couple of weeks. Lucky enough, the fracture in my, or the break in my knuckle was literally 0.5 millimeter away from me missing 8 weeks. So just very, very lucky. And then there and back in there, wow. Every single game, weeks. And it was one of the most painful things I've ever had. But I just had to suck it up. Hand would blow up like a balloon after the game. But anyway, back into, my special memories. Definitely round 1, just because it was such a, such a big moment for the club. And that would be etched into history forever. When I've just moved into, I'm the chairman of the past players now at the Giants and running all their functions and events around that. Funny enough, I ran into Dave last year during the final series and he was telling me I'm actually player 001 at the club because of my last name, because of Bugg.
So that is awesome.
That's a pretty cool, that's pretty cool. And then I guess our first win, for me, first game, first win. They were super special. I was, not fortunate enough to play in any finals up there. So I would say those two were probably the most special for me.
Mate, that's pretty cool. 001. What do they give you? A baggy orange or something? Is there some sort of?
They didn't yet, but I'm going to follow up because I'm on.
Yeah. So, what led you to come back to Melbourne? What was the real driver for you? Was it around playing, or was it just coming back home to the city?
Yeah, it's funny if I'm going from a mindset back then, I felt like every time we lost, I got dropped, and I didn't feel like there was much belief in me from a coaching point of view. So I felt like, if we lost, Leon was the first one to say, you're dropped. And for me, it was a bit disheartening. In terms of confidence in myself, I really struggled with that. And then I'd go back, to seconds level and I'd actually play really, really well. I was a very strong performer at seconds level. And then I'd earn my way back in. And then I'd feel like, it was tough to kind of build some really, consistent performances. And as soon as we lost, again, bang, I was back in the twos. But so initially, I used to blame the coaches and be like, fuck, give me a chance. But now looking back, I can honestly say that, I would have been a tough person to coach back then. Although I was very hardworking in regards to training sessions, game day, I feel like in terms of my commitment to the club and footy, I probably wasn't ultimate professional, and I would have been tough to coach. So I can look back now and actually say that the reason I didn't get more opportunities is probably because of myself.
Yeah.
Again, I had a lucrative offer from Melbourne, 3 years on really good money, a lot more than what I was getting offered at Giants. And then, just to be back in Melbourne with my family was a huge attraction. And also Melbourne at the time, I genuinely believe, even now, I still think they've got an amazing side. If you look at the quality of players on their list,
Definitely.
It's only better than what it was when I got there. But they've got some really good players. It's just about obviously getting it together. But that for me, that was the attraction. Obviously, a bigger deal, longer deal. And then, sitting in a room with coaches at Melbourne telling you, we really believe you're going to be, next premiership side and be a strong contributor in our actual main team every week. For me, that was what got me over the line.
Yeah, it's pretty cool when you can get to the point where you can be reflective and be like, you know what, I was a big part of the problem. Because I definitely, man, I'm like you. For 3 years, even after I came out of soccer, I'm like, it was their fault. Do you know what I mean? And then I realized, actually, I would have been so fucking hard to coach. I was a little egotistical, thought I was better than what I was, probably wasn't the best professional and expected everything to happen. But then you get to the point where you're just like, oh yeah, it probably was me. And it's like...
Yeah, I think a combination sometimes, but I think if you can reflect and actually look at it objectively and not be so kind of, one-dimensional in terms of blaming other people, that's when you actually make, you learn the most.
Yeah, no, definitely. And when you came back to Melbourne, I would say they were probably in a similar position to Carlton last year, maybe, where you started to see they could be on the up and they started to actually bring in talent and people wanted to come to Melbourne because they saw a change in direction and the coach and things like that. How was your experience there? Because one of the things that stands out, there's a couple of moments that stand out, which we'll go into, but you're quite famous, I felt, at the Melbourne Demons. The famous mural in the city is one that stands out to me still to this day, which is your Twitter cover, I think, where you've got your arms out like the Michael Jordan wingspan.
Nah, it's pretty cool. Melbourne was a really cool experience. I feel like, not only was I trying to be the best person I could be, at Giants and at Melbourne, but I really tried to make other people better around me. And just from a confidence point of view, I saw so much value in myself when I played with confidence. And I just looked at a lot of young players around me and they were very, they were hindered by coach feedback. A lot of them were younger and they wouldn't take it very well. So what I tried to instill was just, positivity and just positive reinforcement to show them, these guys are stars. If you look at Christian Petrarca, look at the way he plays this year with so much confidence versus maybe his first few years. For me, he's still the same player. At training, I saw him do all that stuff at training, and he's a star. Probably one of the best players I've played with, if not the best. And then you look at him, obviously, with a confidence point of view. So for me, I love my time at Melbourne, but I guess I got some pivotal moments with the mural. I've got the Johannesson Instagram story, and then also the Mills hit as well. They're probably three of the big things that I remember from me at Melbourne for good and bad.
Can you give us a bit of the Johannesson Instagram story? Because I actually don't know what that one is.
Yeah? Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, it all started because I love Conor McGregor. And again, back to the confidence stuff. So I felt like, although, looking back now.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Who the fuck is that guy? I just love him, man. I look. He's one of my biggest inspirations in terms of not giving a fuck what anyone else thinks and just doing your thing. I guess, what I probably should have taken into consideration a little bit more than what I did was I was in a team environment, not an individual sport. Saying that though, even though I was being very, I guess, a couple of the moves I did were individual, could be viewed as being an individual. I really did, behind closed doors, I was the one putting in most effort into team stuff. I put my hand on my heart and say I was so committed to making other people better that I felt like when I did these things, maybe off field or I did these things away from football, I felt like I'd done enough with the team stuff to show this isn't an act of me trying to be individualized. This is just me being me. So yeah, that was an interesting one because basically what happened was I was watching Conor McGregor and I was just like, if I say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. So I don't know, just that day I was like, I wanted to be confident, and I just rocked up at the game. I think I said to one of my mates, like, I'm going to do something today. Like, I'm going to do something different. I didn't even know what it was. Rocked up at the game. Watsy jumped out of the car, like, next to me, and I was like, Watsy, come out. Just took a screenshot. He had no idea. And I just tagged Jason Johannesson and said, you ready? I don't know why I wrote you ready. I just did. And it, like, we were targeting that game as well. But I didn't even think about that. I just thought, like, this is going to be I just thought, like, we're coming after these guys. And that's what I wanted to play with. I wanted to play with supreme confidence. And, you know, we won that game that day. And I played very well, and so did Watsy. So you can criticize it all you want, but I think I had 20 and kicked 2, and our team played really, really well. But again, I took the selfie, did that, then put my phone in my bag, because you can't have your phone 2 hours before the game. So I did it like literally 2 hours and 1 minute before the game, put my phone in the pocket. Then we played. They come after me straight away. There's plenty of vision on it. And then, yeah, after the game, we got off the field, and it was just viral. Like, that was literally so
crazy, man.
I remember Goody pulling us in and just saying, you know, at the point we won, so they couldn't really say too much, but they just said, you know, no more posting on game day. So, yeah, obviously I didn't do that anymore, but yeah,
like I get that to a certain extent, but like at the same time, how good is that as a fan to be able to see players do that in like a team sport? Like, how much more exciting would that be if I'm going on Instagram watching Bulldogs versus Melbourne, seeing an opposition player tag another player and saying, you ready? Like, I'm getting popcorn. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, this is where I think AFL have a lot to learn. And I mean, that's part of the reason I left it. It's like, if they don't accept it's an entertainment sport, then like they're never going to grow. And, you know, they talk about wanting to be a global sport, a global company. It's not going to happen if you don't change with the times. You look at America, look at Dame Lillard and Westbrook and CJ McCollum and Pat Beverly, and for anyone that watches NBA, and it's amazing. Like, this stuff is just, it's so entertaining. Like, we follow it live all the time. As soon as they play each other, we want to watch that game, and it just creates attention. And you know, one thing that Australia is bad at is they think by doing that you're being arrogant, but it's just confident. And, you know, if everyone did it, the sport would be much bigger. Yeah,
because you mentioned the NBA players. And they go at each other's necks. Like, if they see a weakness in someone, they're going to go after him, and they vocalize it in the media, and it's like it becomes a social media frenzy, and then it's like everyone tunes in. They don't get criticized, whereas AFL's still got that element of, like, you know, there's got to be that respect, and coaches are very prim and proper on like culture, and, you know, we don't need any more pressure than we have already. But I think one thing for you, which is why, and you mentioned your performance that day when you did that Instagram photos, you played footy on the edge, and not from a point of where, you know, you would go at people to hurt people or anything like that, but that just would get the best out of yourself. And sometimes I was like that too. I turned into a bit of a different character, to say, off the field as I was on the field, because on the field I became a bit more trash talky, a bit more confident, a bit more like robust in everything I did, because it actually made me perform better. It wasn't like anything other than that. And I think you're quite similar in that sense, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. I think now I can look back and see that, you know, because it's a team sport, because there's 18 or 22 players that are playing, maybe, you know, my actions will put more pressure on other people who aren't that, you know, who don't deal with that as well as what I do. But I still believe that, you know, if you can't handle that type of pressure, then it's probably an insecurity in your approach on the game, either from a performance point of view or even a preparation point of view. So I just made sure my preparation was the best I could possibly do, which it was. And then I didn't have any, even though I said this stuff, like, there was zero pressure on me, because I knew I'd done the work. So
yeah.
That's how I view that.
No, it's pretty cool. I like it, man. I do. I can see why, you know, Simon Goodman probably doesn't like it as a coach, but as a fan, I mean, what more can you freaking ask for? I'd love going into the finals tonight and tomorrow in the AFL if one player just called another one out, and it's like, it's game on. I mean, how much more exciting is that going to be to watch? But you mentioned a couple of moments there that were quite pivotal in your 30 plus games for the Demons, because you did make a pretty big impact in those 30 games on and off the field. It's safe to say Tommy Bugg left his name there. But one of them was probably a bit more of a sour moment that probably was, you know, reviewed quite firmly, and you copped a lot of stick for. And I probably want to speak about the Callum Mills incident a little bit, because for those that didn't watch it, it was Melbourne versus Sydney. Probably would have been like 2014 or 15, was it, back then? I think I was living in the UK, so it might have been.
No, it would have been 217.
217. Oh, was it that? Okay, there you go. So it was even later. So yeah, and Pretty much, Lee. It was something that was off the ball. I don't recall the whole incident, so I might need your advice a little bit. But I felt there was a bit of niggle coming from Callum Mills towards you, and there might have been stuff that happened well before the game. But pretty much how it ended was a clock to the face from you to Callum Mills, and it sent him to sleep, and you copped a lot of stick and got a pretty harsh suspension and a lot of harsh criticism from people probably within the club, outside the club, and also outside of the fans in general. Can you just detail to me what that whole experience was like for you?
Yeah, it's a funny one. It's I guess from the game point of view, it had nothing to do with Cal Mills. I think from my point of view, like I'd been niggled. It was 5 minutes into the game, so it wasn't like he'd been niggling me all day and I just snapped and I lost it. And I'm not an aggressive person either. Like, I mean, if you know me, I'm a lover, not a hater.
Yeah.
And sorry, lover, not a fighter. Sorry. And so with Callum, yeah, he just bumped me. He was just niggling me, trying to check me when I was running, and same kind of thing that I'd done to a lot of people before, is just hit them in the chest, punch them in the chest, whatever. Like not usually punch, but usually just push him in the chest and do it hard because I don't want him to check me again. But not in an aggressive manner, just to it was a strategic move that I'd done for years. But in that case, I just hit him flush on the jaw, and it wasn't even hard. Like, I mean, maybe I watched too many Conor McGregor fights when he fought Aldo or something. But like, I literally hit him on the sweat. The one thing I don't remember much after even throughout the game, everything was just it was so intense, and I probably had a lot of anxiety just thinking about different things. But that moment I remember like literally today. And as I hit him, he went down, but he actually was going down and said like "fuck you" on the way down. So I thought he was either faking it or it didn't even get him really. So that's, if you look at the footage, you'll actually see me I don't even react to it. I don't look down. I don't look back. I literally just do it, and then I'm watching the ball, and then an umpire 100 meters off the ball behind me blows the whistle, runs over, and he's just lying on the ground. And then I'm like, fuck, I'm in some trouble.
Yeah.
And then obviously, you watch the Sydney players come at me, and again, I realized immediately that I'd done the wrong thing, and I'm getting like swung around in circles and dragged. I'm not fighting back because I did immediately I knew that this is I've done the wrong thing. So
yeah,
it was crazy. Like, I mean, just a rush of emotions, not really knowing what to do. Then for the rest of the game, getting sniped. Someone hit me in the third quarter off the ball. Just off the ball, and I think I perforated my eardrum. Like, I was just getting cleaned up everywhere, but probably deserved it as well. I would have done the same thing if someone did that to a player on my team.
Yeah. Was that
And then afterwards,
sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
No, I was going to say, what was the suspension that came with that from the AFL?
Yeah, so I got 7 weeks. Yeah, I got the same as Barry Hall
for the Brent Staker hit.
For the Brent Staker hit, yeah. So for me, I was just like, how could I get the same as Barry Hall? I didn't even mean it. You know what I mean? So, but it got down to 6 weeks. So because of early plea or guilty plea or whatever it was called, I got 6 weeks. But I just remember, after that incident, I got off the field, I walked in, and initially I was just like, I didn't really realize what I'd done. I was kind of like in the change rooms, like, I hadn't seen the footage. And then when I saw the footage, it was weird. It was like an out-of-body experience. I actually felt myself back in the moment it happened, but watching from the stands. And I was just like, yeah, it was really weird. And that's when I knew, that's when it kind of hit me, and I was like, wow, I'm going to miss a lot of footy here.
Did it look worse? Did it look worse when you watched it back than, I guess, when you did it?
Yeah, a lot worse. Because I was on the field for the rest of the game. I'm thinking like, maybe I'll just clock. Maybe he'll be right. He'll get back on, and I won't even miss a week. Like, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like, I was going through, and then I'm thinking, it'll just be 2 or 3 weeks. I'll get back. I'll be fine. I'll play finals. But yeah, obviously it wasn't that. And then I got off. I remember Jonesy showing me the hit because he didn't play that game, I don't think. And then immediately when that happened, I kind of just went up to the social media manager and just spoke with him, and we just thought it was the best approach to get on air straight away and speak and just apologise directly to Callum, his family, Sydney Swans, and just AFL and the wider community. Like, we obviously, no one wants to see that kind of stuff on TV, and we definitely don't want younger players and younger people seeing that and inciting any type of violence, especially at local footy level. So I thought that initially that was probably the right thing to do, and then it was a bit of a flow-on effect from then. Obviously, I had to go back to training, then tribunal, and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, because one thing, like, and obviously I was in your corner as like one of your brothers in this moment, but it's not something you ever condone and want to see on a footy field. But it does kind of piss me off in the sense that you mentioned the Barry Hall incident. And like for me, Barry Hall's hit on Brent Staker is probably like the worst thing you'll ever see. And was probably a lot worse than yours because it's just like he KOs the bloke for no reason.
Yeah.
And
I guess for my one was just more in an action when I was like,
correct.
going to push off.
Correct.
Where Barry turned around and just hit
KO'd
him. So,
but Barry Hall's,
then it was hard.
Barry Hall's video goes like, I mean, I saw Mason Cox share it with some guy in the States who's reviewing the AFL and just kind of showed him as like, hey, this is what AFL footy's about. Like it's glorifying it. You know what I mean? Yeah, whereas like your next sort of 7 weeks were like a bit of a living hell in Melbourne, wasn't it? Because you were seen as like this villain. I remember even my old man said he reached out to you and caught up with you for a coffee just to check in on you. Like you went through a really tough period on the other side of that with a lot of backlash. So that must have been pretty tough. That must have been pretty tough for you.
Yeah, it was. I mean, for me, like getting compared to someone like, again, I haven't actually, I don't think I've met Barry Hall, but I'm sure he's a nice person. And but to get put in the same category as someone that had done that and that I looked at for so long and gone like, that's a bad image for the game. To be, put in the same category, that kind of hurt a little bit. But I mean, I'm very lucky that I built that strong mindset because if it was someone that didn't have a strong mindset in my position, I genuinely think there would be, I would have had a lot more issues. But I'm just blessed that I had obviously great people around me, and obviously I built, for a couple of years there, I'd start to build a really, really strong mindset where I wasn't affected by other people's opinions on me, and I really had a strong sense of who I am. But it's funny, like I mean, I got so many messages on Instagram, especially because it come from. The other thing I didn't mention as well is, which I'm probably the only person ever to do, is when we played Richmond, I celebrated running into an open goal, which no one's ever done before. And I don't know why I did it. I did it. So I took a hanger on Basher Hooley, and then I ran into an open goal and like pointed at the goal before I did it. So, and then I shushed the crowd at Richmond.
Like, you're an entertainment machine.
I don't know, I was practicing what I was preaching, but so I decided Western Bulldogs, then I decided Richmond, who's the biggest club in Australia, which I actually, I love the club, I love Richmond Club, but I'd done all that and then led up to this, so people just ready to come at me with everything. So I mean, I couldn't explain how many messages or DMs I had on Instagram with, people just fucking losing it at me, death threats, telling them they're going to come around to my house. It's just insane amount of influx of that stuff. So again, luckily that I had a really strong mindset. But even at some points, I was probably a little bit worried for my safety in regards to people sending me death threats and living in Paran at the time as well, which was super central. But I mean, in regards to seeing people face to face, I'd walk down the street and no one ever said a bad word. Like I'd have people come up to me and say, "I hope you're okay," and it's not a true reflection of your character. And these were just random people. So I mean, I'm just glad that I left a really good, impact or imprint on these other people, even though that I'd done something like this.
Yeah, because there's a human element to that as well. Everyone makes mistakes and people start to forget that you're a human on the other side of it. And there's been a few people we've had on the podcast that have come out of difficult moments being in the spotlight where they've had like death threats and absolute just social media abuse, which is not called for in any way. But as because that's a bit of a like defining moment of your Melbourne career, which is a bit of a shame in a sense because a lot of people maybe overlook actually how skilled of a footy player you really were. And to get, 90 odd games or whatever it was you played in the AFL system up until the age of 25 wasn't just on like playing on the edge and clocking blokes. Like you had a lot of real skill. But did you ever start, was that sort of around that period, was there a point there where you started realizing maybe footy wasn't what you wanted to do? Or was that sort of as we move into the Carlton experience, when did that all start to change for you?
Yeah, it was an interesting experience because again, like, I mean, I wasn't happy with a lot of things that happened throughout that period of time, either with my family. And I hold no animosity towards the Melbourne Footy Club. They gave me an opportunity and I still to this day, I've got mates there and I love watching them. But, in regards to when I look back and reflect how they handled my situation, regardless if I was being a little shithead or not, I think they could probably look back now and say they could have handled a lot better from a personal well-being, mental health point of view. Like, I mean, I got sent away from, first of all, when it all happened, Goody called me the next few days and just checked in and made sure I was okay, which, I was super grateful for at the time. So that was sweet. And then we were meant to do a football report, like a review after the game. After every game, you have to say, how was your offense, defense, blah, blah, all this kind of stuff. And I didn't. I think I wrote on mine just a night I'd like to forget. That's all I think I wrote. And I knew I wasn't playing for a long period of time. I wasn't trying to be a smart ass. I just didn't know how to even, I didn't even know how to reflect on that game. So I wrote that, and then I got to the club on Monday, went to training. It was a weird thing because there was so much media there and it was all about me, which again, I'm not that type of person. I actually don't want it to be all about me, even though I did things like that. And then he ripped me about, being arrogant, not putting the report in properly, which again, I can see from his point of view, maybe he just wanted me to, follow the rules, which is understandable. So from then, and then I had obviously the tribunal that night. And just before I was about to go to tribunal, he pulled me in and just said that I wasn't going to be, allowed to come to the club for the next 10 days. Which for me, it's probably the one moment in my life that I've actually genuinely had anxiety. And I was just shocked. I thought this is the club, obviously going through a tough time. And I just thought, he really could have been there, especially as a leader and someone I really looked up to. And he kind of just said, you're not coming back to the club for 10 days. And then I had, a couple of people check in with me. I think Shannon Burns checked in with me. He was the welfare manager a couple of times. But probably one person, Max Gorn, he checked in with me a couple of times. And I actually felt a bit rude the first time he reached out. I didn't reply to anyone. I kind of just put my phone down. And then he kind of sent me another message a couple of days later going like, come on, mate. Like, I'm trying to reach out to make sure you're okay. And I just, I apologized and said, mate, thanks so much. And I appreciate it. But, I guess that shows a bit of Max's character too. And when he got picked to be the captain, I was actually genuinely grateful and happy for him because, first of all, he's a great person, great player. But just that moment there showed me he genuinely cared. He didn't have to do that. And he wasn't captain leader at the time, I don't think. So that happened. And then, and obviously got I had to go to the tribunal and put my case forward. And I had no idea what to do. I literally had no idea. I just had trusting what Melbourne was saying, and they were telling me to go in, and plead guilty and whatnot. So I did that, and obviously got my weeks, and then I didn't really hear from the club for 10 days. So I really reflected on everything then, and just like you said before, is footy for me? Is this just a business, or is it a family? Because before that, I felt like footy was everything to me, and I realized fairly quickly that if something goes wrong, you really find out who the people are going to be there for you. So yeah, that was a really interesting time in my life. I mean, I hold no animosity towards Goody or the club. Like, I thank them, and it's probably one of my biggest lessons because I had to learn shit on my own.
Yeah.
And I had to go by myself, which I learned so much from. And then, yeah, man, from there, I was just like, I need to focus on myself and life after footy, because if I don't, not only is footy going to finish, but I'm going to have nothing afterwards. So that was really the creation of, I spent 9 months. I didn't really drink over that time. I just was so dedicated to proving everyone wrong. And then I guess I didn't get picked for round one the next year, and I was in the best nick of my footy career. I kicked goals in the preseason. They didn't pick me round one. They went with another player, which a week later that player got dropped, and they come and told me that they should have picked me the week one, but they obviously didn't. And then I played a few games, and then my biggest moment was I was all into manifestation, and I wanted to kick 5 goals at AFL level, and I against North Melbourne was my breakout game, I felt, and I kicked 4 goals, 1. Just off kind of what I was after, but I did that, and then I played the next week against Hawthorn. I kicked 4 points. I think I was like maybe the 3rd highest possession getter for our team, and then I was dropped the following week. So for me, I just had no confidence in a system that I couldn't control. I was in, and I don't like to make excuses either, but it gets to a point where you review what your life is and what everything, surroundings around you. And if I can't control those surroundings, then I wanted to remove myself. And that's when I really started, to think of life outside of footy. And that's when Zeus Group started to form.
Yeah, it's crazy that you say that about manifestation, because I'm a massive believer in that. Also, a couple of comments on that. The first one, where you mentioned the coach at Melbourne at the time thought it might be the best to isolate you from the team in your probably darkest moment, is a really weird strategy to me. And my only thing from his perspective that could even make sense, and realistically it doesn't make sense, was the noise that it would bring onto the other 40-odd players who were training every day in the media and stuff. But at the same time, but you'd think you'd put your arm around a bloke who's in a shitty spot. I wonder if he'd do that again, knowing, but I guess what's made me happy about hearing that is how you took it as a positive experience to reflect and grow.
Yeah,
which is
for sure. if I saw Goody down the street now, like I said, I'd have no, anger towards him or anything like that. Like I'd actually love to catch up at some point and discuss all this stuff because, it was a pivotal moment in my life. But yeah, I mean, from the only thing I kind of saw or I could take away from maybe why he did it is just, he was a young coach at the time too. I think it was only his second year. He's inexperienced probably at that time too. And it was a lot of, I did put a lot of pressure onto the club, which, he was probably not happy about or maybe even people higher than him were, not happy about. So yeah, that's what I can kind of make sense of it. But again, like if I saw him down the street, say g'day, and, we shared some great memories together. So,
yeah,
that stuff too.
Yeah. So as you move out of the Melbourne experience, which from a character point of view, it seems like you're getting to know yourself better. You're strong. You've got a stronger sense of self. You're starting to understand and I guess value experiences in life, and whether that's in footy or outside of footy, you're starting to firm up a view of that, which I got to a point of that too, where it's like, as much as I've given to this sport and how much I love it, how much is this giving back to me right now to the point that I'm getting the satisfaction I need? And is there other things in life that can make me happier or I can do? And you then, I think you got rookie drafted, was it to Carlton?
Yeah.
Winning the rookie draft?
Yeah.
Was it, or did you get traded?
I'm delisted free agent. I got picked up as.
Delisted free agent. Okay. So there's two things for the Carlton experience. One is, I know you as a bloke would have been pretty good around the club, and I think we were out one night having a few drinks, and there was a few of the younger boys there who were relatively new at the time. I think might have been Zach Fisher and a couple others. And I just remember you going out of your way to no, I got to look after the younger boys. And I could see you had that perspective on you as I've had a few years in the system now. I know these boys, they're out in public. I got to look after them. And we completely shifted our whole night of what we're doing to make sure they're okay, which is a lot of things that people don't really see or know about you, which is pretty cool. But what was that period like for you at Carlton? Was that a really tough time because you were kind of thinking of life outside of footy as well?
Yeah, it was a very hard time for me because I wanted to so with all the stuff with Melbourne, I wanted to I did want to quit. I went into the meeting, I think when they said they were going to delist me. Again, I think I deserve probably a contract. If you think at the time I was literally having 30 and 2 or 3 every week in the twos. I should have been up until about half time. I was probably best on ground in the VFL grand final. And then obviously, Hawthorn Box Hill took over and smashed us, and I don't know, someone else won it. But, in regards to that, I just felt like, I just felt like it was a really hard point because then I was done. Like after they said you delisted, I was, my dad was really keen on me to keep playing, which I can see. He's spent 20 years, driving me around to basketball, footy, all this kind of stuff, to just give it up like that after, a couple hard challenges. And I didn't want it to look like I was quitting. But I just had my priorities had changed and I didn't want to play. And then, Sauce contacted me, Stephen Silvani from Carlton. I had a really good friendship with him and, obviously spent a lot of time up at Giants together. So for him, he just said, mate, come in and have a meeting with Brendan Bolton. And if you want to continue to play, let's do that. If you don't, then that's sweet. No pressure at all. And I went into that meeting really open-minded. But yeah, I flew back from the States to take the meeting as well. So I was over there with Gorney, Harmsy and a couple other people as well. And I flew back to take the meeting. So obviously,
when you'd left Melbourne, had you decided you were potentially going to give it up or you were still wanting to play footy then?
No, I was done.
So you were done. Right. So you took that meeting. So when you said you were going in with an open mind, it was an open mind of
So when basically Melbourne, I finished at Melbourne. Yeah. Then I had 4 or 6 weeks off or forever off in my head. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I'd gone overseas, man, and I'm fucking drinking every day. I'm fucking eating whatever I want, burgers, fries, whatever the fuck I want. And then I get a call from a manager, hey mate, Sauce wants to meet with you, but you got to be back next week, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, fuck, all right, I'll fly back, and I'll come in open-minded because, it's another opportunity. And the way Sauce was talking was super positive. So I was like, sweet. So I come back, went into that meeting, I guess I was open-minded, but I was still very strong on, what I wanted. And something was going to have to make me want to play to do it. And basically got in there. Brendan Bolton was just like, mate, we love the way you play. We really do see you in the side. We think you can offer a lot of experience and a lot of advice to the younger players that need to play with confidence and need to play with a bit of aggression. And we just want you to be you. That's all he said. He just said, we want you to come in. Don't be anyone else. Just be you. And that's probably the only thing that would have got me over the line. If he didn't say that line, I probably would have never gone to Carlton.
That's crazy.
So I'm just like so thankful for even Brendan, my time with him. Like he's an amazing person, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And then Sauce as well. But the hardest thing with that is, I went into Carlton and I was out of shape. Like, I was known as the fit person at Giants, which Sauce knew me for. I was known as the fit person just in general. Like I used to work so hard. And I remember I obviously got to the club. I was out of shape. I don't even know what my skinnies were. They were high though. They were like, they were actually decent for what I was doing, drinking and eating. Like they were only like 70 odd or 75, which is still high, very high.
Still pretty bad.
Still bad, but I thought I would have been over 100 because I just hadn't done anything. Like I didn't give a fuck about my fitness.
Yeah.
And then I did the first running session and I was last. And we're doing hill sprints. I'm not the best at hill sprints at the best of times.
Yeah.
And then I'm running. All of a sudden, I see my first run running around, and then I see Sauce at the top of the hill, and I'm last, and I'm thinking, fuck, he's gonna he's gonna be. I can just see him. Like the way he was looking at me was like, wow. Anyway. Come to Tuesday next week, and he pulled me in and he said, what's going on? Like, I know the reason I got you to the club is because I knew you were fit and I knew you were you're going to push those boundaries and the standards. So I felt, it was hard because I was in such bad shape, and I'm trying to get my mind to back into that footy professional environment, which is very, very tough if you've gone over that edge where I'm not playing anymore. And a lot of guys,
man, it is.
As soon as as soon as that mind's gone, I was still young, but you look at those, people that retire at 30, 32, they say as soon as the mind's gone, it's hard. It really is. It's so hard.
Dana White says, he goes, if there's ever a fighter that's thinking about retirement, that's what you should do. Because it's true. If your mind can go there, then that's probably the right thing to do. But do you regret taking the Carlton contract at all though? Because
no, I don't. Because at the time, I really wanted to. I had every intention into putting everything into it.
Yeah.
But it was like, I couldn't run 2K without being puffed, being absolutely puffed. Like it was just a mission to get to training, to even walk out on the field. It was a mission.
Yeah.
So after a while, and the one thing Sauce said to me, we don't want you quitting after, just say you don't play the first few rounds. We don't want you quitting or even, halfway through the year. So I never had the intention of retiring or quitting at all, ever. But, as Zuz Group kind of got bigger and more established. And in October that year, it probably wasn't at a point where I needed to, be there full time. I could just do my things part time. I had a couple of workers working for me at the moment. But then, the vision of growing the company, like if we wanted to be a global company, I couldn't be playing footy on the weekend and training and putting all my energy and effort into that and not, and we were asking, you were potentially raising for investment then as well. And how am I meant to ask people for $100K, $1 million more if I'm not doing it full time? Mm-hmm. So, my biggest thing was, and it's funny because when I think back, I'm in the change rooms writing emails for talent, I'm making phone calls, and then I'll just literally put my phone down, walk out for training, come in, I'm doing emails, just trying to grow the business. And the hardest thing I quit was I just felt like I was letting so many people down. My dad, Sauce, the club at Carlton, they'd given me a spot on a list, and then some other kid wasn't going to be able to get that chance. Fortunately enough, that's the year they brought in the preseason draft, and 2 people got the opportunity, and it gave who did it give? Michael Gibbons, and can't think of the other one, but it gave Michael Gibbons and another player another opportunity. So those guys, I could see how much work they were putting in and how much they wanted it, and for me to look at that effort and then me not, I just that never would have sat well with me. Yeah. And then when I had so many people just saying you're going to regret quitting. You're going to regret quitting. I had no one tell me, do it, quit, except for me. And then, it's pretty hard because you've got all your mentors, you've got all your support systems, you've got your family, you've got your best mates, all telling you no. And then you've got me that decided, no, I'm not playing anymore. So they all said, you're going to regret it. And my biggest thing was, I'm going to regret it if I keep playing. So I don't know. One thing I've learned is just I've backed myself in, and I've never had an opportunity where it's been the wrong decision for me. So, right. That's kind of the advice. When anyone asks me for advice, I always just say back yourself in 100%. Obviously, you want to do it with some calculations and do it. We want it to be calculated in a sense, not just saying, I'm giving up a 200, 300, whatever K job a year and then have nothing to fall back on. I was destined for, what I'm doing now, and I'm super passionate about it. And it's probably, a large reason to why we're the number one agency in what we're doing at the moment. So in Australia.
No, I think it's crazy. For a lot of reasons, because you've, as you said, to leave a sport or a situation that you've been so tied to from a young age, and your family members have associated all your happiness and success with. My family related to the same thing. When I walked away, they were like in shock and disappointment and sadness. And obviously they always wanted what's best for me, and probably for you, the same thing. But it's a pretty tough decision to walk away from it on your own terms.
Yeah.
Because by the book, you should be playing footy till you're 30, 34, 35 and have a great career and then make the move out. But Zuz was a real passion for you and was something that was building, as you said, as you're at Carlton, maybe on the back end of Melbourne even. Can you explain to the listeners, for those that don't have any idea of what you're doing now, how incredible it is and what the actually company is based around?
Yeah, so the company's called Zuz Group. We specialize in commercializing digital assets. So basically, to simplify that, is for social, we manage social media influencers or talent. Also, we're doing some athlete stuff now. Basically, anyone with a large profile online, and then we're basically matching them up with brands or advertising that aligns with their brand. So, for me, it's relationship based. It's it's sales based, and it's something that I'm really natural at. For us, obviously a social media agency, we're number one in Australia, undeniably. And yeah, we, in terms of a service, like I feel like when I played football and when I was an athlete, there was certain things that I wanted from my management that I didn't get, although they did a great job. There was more to it than just, contracts. So what I try to instill into, my services now, or what I'm doing is giving out a lot of our talent at 18 to 22 as well. So they're young, inexperienced, a lot of them are female and don't have an idea around, what's expected from an admin or financial or even, tax compliance point of view. And, I really offer those type of services for them just to make sure, they get the type of advice that I always wanted. So I get a lot of fulfillment out of that. And I guess for us, we're looking to obviously number one here in Australia, but we've moved into America now. So we've got an office in Beverly Hills. We're looking to move into the UK halfway through or early next year. And for me, it's just I want to be the number one agency in social media influencing. And, we're developing our growth through technology. So we've positioned ourselves as a tech company, and that's our point of difference from a growth point of view, from an efficiency point of view. And I'm sure that a lot of people have heard of Zuz Group now in Australia because of such a big footprint that we're leaving.
But it's pretty cool, man. Like I must say, just when you think about it, and this is a big part of me with this whole podcast, is yes, sport is a lot of people's main focus and initiative, and whilst you're there, you should maximize your talent. But the skill set that comes with being an athlete at the top and how it can translate into so many other areas of life to make a plan B or C better than your plan A, I think you're definitely an example of, because a lot of people would say when you went to Melbourne or GWS, you've got absolutely no right to be a CEO or managing director of a social media influencer agency that's going to take the globe by storm and be having discussions with a lot of, investors and business people and people on your board of how we can get some like Series A, Series B, Series C funding for millions and millions of dollars. But that's what you're doing, which is just incredible. And a couple of things that may stand out about you in this space, which I think highlights why it's really important to have a bit of a roadmap out of sport, an idea of what you're thinking of doing and how you want to do it. Because you do have, your energy's always been really electric, I would say. You're quite a positive person, look at life at a glass half full, which, through your tough moments you've shown. And, as a communicator, you're a really strong communicator and very personable with people. So these skill sets and fundamentals have probably translated into business. And as you said, it's a really natural shift for you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a pretty unique. Like you don't really get a CV or a degree in this space. It's something you've just learnt on the fly, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of it I've learned on the go. A lot of it's I've got some really strong mentors that help and guide. And what I've learned is you don't necessarily. I'm not practicing for any industry. I'm practicing like I do a lot of personal development. So things like sales. Well, sales is everything, but things like communication and building relationships. You have to work on those things. They don't just come naturally. So the way you interact with people and that, you've got to review that stuff. And if you don't have good relationship building, then you need to either start working on it or, hang around with people that are good at it. So you do learn. But I think the biggest things I took away from footy were the relationship stuff. You're in an environment where you have to communicate with people and you have to work with people, and it builds that team. If you're not open to working with people or basically every day you've got challenges as a footy player in some way, shape or form. And you've either got to do that by yourself. So there's problem solving there, or you've got to do it with the team. And then there's team building there. So it's all those skills mashed up for me with that confidence, which I instilled for years and years and years. Like I remember driving to training, saying out loud, like by myself. If there was a fly on the wall, people would think I'm crazy. But I used to say things out loud and manifest things, in person, because it's a lot stronger if you say it out loud. So, for instance, but it's actually talking about memories back at footy. This is probably one of the key ones that really changed my mind. So I was big around manifestation, and I got dropped. I got dropped from, I can't remember who we played, Fremantle or something, and it was early in the year, and I got dropped. And I was the Conor McGregor mindset, so I was like, I'm going to kick 5 goals and have 35 touches in the twos. Like nothing's going to stop me. I'm going to manifest it all week. I'm going to say it every day. I'm going to say it 100 times a day, and I'm going to do it. I've got Snapchats still of my story. I used to send Snapchats on the way driving to the game, sending Snapchats to my mates like, I'm kicking 5, I'm having 35. Nothing's going to stop me. And it's funny because you get dropped and they want to see how you react. So I'll go into the game, confident as ever. I think the first quarter I might have had like 5 touches and didn't kick a goal. But again, I'm just saying in my head over and over again, I'm at 35, kicking 5. And then, in the second quarter, I kicked 2. I had a few more touches, and that you don't actually know what you're going to get, because at VFL level, you don't see it up on the screen, you don't see anything. It's just you find out at the end of the game. And then I'd kick 4, and I'm thinking like, this is it. Like I'm going to literally manifest everything I've been talking about, and I've been preaching to my mates, my family, and it's still in this close circle. I wasn't saying it out loud to everyone, but I was saying it to my close family and friends. And then I mark the ball on like the 45-meter line. I'm lining up. I'm like, this is it. Like I'm manifesting it, confident. I missed. So I didn't make the distance. And I was just like thinking, fuck, that was it. That was my moment to prove to myself. Anyway, I was like, I've got to keep positive. Anyway, I did. Ball comes back down. Like a couple of minutes later, I'm one-on-one with a guy. I outmark him. And then I went back and snapped the ball on my right, kicked the goal, kicked 5, get off the ground. I had exactly 35 and 5 that game.
That's insane.
So for me, it was just like, that just opened my mind up to, maybe even if I didn't get 35 and 5 that day and I had 30 and 3, that's still better than what I would have had if I didn't have that mindset. So I just took that. That was like my really pivotal moment around, if I manifest stuff and if I really truly believe something, I can achieve it. Mixed in with the skill sets that I was currently building and the mentors and the guidance I had around me, I was just, there's nothing going to stop me right now. Like, it's a funny thing because I used to walk in to the club and I used to post shit about Zoos Group on my socials. I'd walk into the club and people would be like, Zoos! So but the crazy thing about that is it's impacting my ability to get a game. So, and mate, Jake Melcham was a funny one. He's a jokester, and he was saying every time I walked in, I actually had to have a word to him to say, bro, you need to stop saying it. I'm not getting a game, because every time I walk in, they think I'm fucking, they just don't
taking the piss.
Yeah, I don't think I'm working. What do you think I'm working on that? So, I'm trying to circle back to why I was talking about this. I think it was the skill set around, what I'm doing now, but.
No, 100%. Yeah, definitely. The translatable skills.
Yeah, those translatable skills. So for me, that was a huge moment. I still think back to it every single day. I think about those type of skills in that moment in particular.
Because I love that about you, and manifestation is something I probably don't think I do enough of. But when I think back to moments where I've done it, and I've actually got a little story about this, because I do want to ask you now about your daily habits of just things you do, because some of these things I feel that you've done back then are definitely now profound in what you do now, which is making you successful. But it's funny, man, when I was 12 years old, I was watching the Under-17 World Cup. It was 2005, and they were playing in Peru. And I was like, the first time I got attached to soccer, and I was watching this guy. His name was Kaz Patafta. And if Kaz is listening, Kaz, he's actually a legend. He was 17 years old playing for Benfica. And he was an Aussie. But he had the number 10 on his back. He was wearing the captain's armband, wearing the Socceroos kit, playing in front of thousands of people in I think it was Mexico. And I'm like, dude, this guy's it. Like, he's made it. And I remember what they did before the game in soccer. They take a team photo, and he stood on the far left with his hand around the player. He had the Australian kind of flag you give the other captain before you shake hands. He had his captain's armband on his stand there, and they took a photo. And I always remember that photo, and I'm like, I pictured in my head, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to stand in that position with a photo, with a captain's armband and all this shit. Anyway, to cut to the chase, it's not to to big me up or anything, but it was around manifestation because I always remembered that. And then when I got my played for the Young Socceroos, and then I captained a tournament we played in Japan, and we're playing Mexico, funnily enough. But we played in the stadium where, I don't know if you probably would know this, but some of the listeners may remember the 2002 World Cup, which was in Japan and Korea, where Ronaldinho chipped David Seaman for England. It was like a free kick where you're supposed to cross it, and it went in the top corner. We played in that stadium, so it was like massive. Anyway, when the photo was taken, I didn't even think. Like, I just went and took the photo. After the game, I got the photo, and I was like, holy fuck. Holding the thing, same position, captain's armband, arm around the guy, massive stadium, like a 50,000 seat stadium. Like just a manifest of that, bro. Like, you know what I mean? And it comes back to that, like what you speak about when you put that out in the atmosphere, shit happens. So do you still do that stuff now in your day-to-day habits? Like, what's a day for you like as a CEO of a company?
Yeah, it's a lot of it's you know, I've got a lot of meetings these days because, you know, it's around, you know, growing the business, so the business development side of things. You know, I'm still trying to acquire talent, still trying to acquire brands to work with. And then there's also, you know, from a staff point of view, you know, we've got 4 staff here in Australia, we've got 4 in America, but we're growing, you know, even more over there. We've also got some, you know, some assistants as well that helps with that. But I mean, a lot of it is, you know, managing other people and delegating roles. But in regards to personal development, like I wake up in the morning, you know, I like to change it up. So every 6 to 8 weeks, I'll try to change it because if it's just the same thing, I get really scared to stay in the same routine. And then just 2 years passes and I'm like, wow, that was just, I was on autopilot. So I try to change it up every 6 to 8 weeks. What my one looks like at the moment is I will sleep with my blinds open now. That's a big one because it gets light at like 6 o'clock. So it wakes me up. And then at 6:30, you know, I probably start getting moving. I've got my laptop, so I just look at my emails quickly, look at any messages, anything important. Do that. Then I walk down to one of my local cafes, get an egg and bacon and a coffee, and then I come back. It's on Turak Road. They do a really good deal if anyone's listening in around.
Give them a shout out. Who are they? What are they called?
Cafe. So they do bacon and almond magic for $10 if you want to.
Almond magic. That's very Melbourne.
It is, but it's you know, it's a very good start. But I love that. So I do that. I come back to my place here now because obviously we're in lockdown, and I usually put some music on. So my neighbors probably hate me, but I literally have it on like level 100, and just like kind of dancing around, singing around, just to get moving. Like even if I don't feel like it, I just do it because it gets my vibe up, and then I'm literally like pumped for the day. So that's that, and then I also go into, at the moment I listen to podcasts. So I used to listen to like an hour at a time, but what I'm feeling now, or what I've been trialing, which I'm really, really liking, is listening to kind of 15, 20 minutes of a podcast and then applying that to my day. So the one I'm listening to, Grant Cardone, I think his name is. Do you know Grant?
Yeah. I think, is he like a real estate mogul or something like that?
Yeah, he's into real estate. He's into a bunch of stuff, but
yeah, I've seen him interview Mayweather. I've seen him. Yeah,
he's got a book called it's called The 10X Rule. It's basically just, you know, if anyone's listening and wants you know, a really good audio book. I'm more into audio books than reading, even though I've read a few books in my time. I do like the audio stuff just because I like to relax and just take it all in. And yeah, basically it talks about, you know, putting in more effort than what's required. So if you're looking for a result here, you actually need to put in 10 times more effort than what you think you need to do. So I listen to that, and that just like literally pumps me up. Like I honestly get goosebumps when I listen to it, and then that starts my day. And then it's just about, you know, looking at different opportunities. So, you know, I had some really cool opportunity when I first met my mentor, which I'm sure we can go into if you want. It's a really cool story. But basically when I met him, the one thing he said to me was just opportunity passes people every single day. It's just whether or not they're ready for it. So what I feel like is I really set my morning routine up to be prepared for any opportunity that comes by me that day. And funny enough, you start to get opportunities if you do this stuff that just pop out of nowhere. You can't explain them. You can't prepare for them. They just come out of nowhere. And, you know, some really cool opportunities come, and you meet some really amazing people. And that's when, you know, you start to get creative and brainstorm ideas. And, you know, that's when special things happen.
I've got to being around Tommy Bugg's inspiring people. I must say, when you're around people like yourself, it's infectious. And I do have a couple more questions before we round out the podcast, but that was going to be one of my ones. Was how did you meet your mentor, and what's that relationship like now? And I guess how pivotal has that been into who you're becoming?
Yeah. I won't go into details of him in terms of name and whatnot, but basically how the story started was I come back to Melbourne. I've always been a person that's really searched for more. So not in a sense of being unfulfilled, but being a sense of, I want to be the best person I can be. And when I come back to Melbourne, I really started to think, I was always entrepreneurial. My parents are entrepreneurial. So I was always thinking like different ideas, products, services, all this kind of stuff. And I moved into a place without one of our good friends, Will Edwards and Tom Quinn, actually, on Wattle Tree Road. And we're living in Armidale. And basically my route to Melbourne Footy Club each day could have gone a lot quicker, but I chose to go down Toorak Road, down St. George's Road to see all the houses and all the cars. Because if you're not familiar with Melbourne or St. George's Road, it's probably the richest street in Melbourne. It's got the best houses and the best cars by a long way.
Yeah, it does.
The dream is to have a house on there at some point. I drove down there and I used to just think, like, how are these people different? If they all live in the same place, they all got a lot of money, like, not that it's all about money, but they've all got, a lot of wealth. How are they able to acquire this? And, I want to know why. So kept drove down there for like 6 months and nothing ever happened. Used to just see Bentleys and get excited for my day. I guess that in a sense was my manifestation back then. And then, I was driving home one day. I had a Holden Cruise at the time, so just a little banged up Holden Cruise, and was driving that up, and I saw a red Lambo on the side of the road, and I kind of got anxiety straight away. I was just like nervous, and I was just, because I was thinking about getting out and knocking on the window. And I couldn't do it. I was like, I don't want to do it. I'm not ready. So I drove up the road halfway through St. George's, and I was like, I gotta do this. Like, I'll regret this for the rest of my life if I don't. Did a U-turn. Fortunate enough that the car hadn't moved yet. And I jumped out and I knocked on the window. The guy looked at me like I was crazy, and I probably was. And he just, I said, like, what do you want? And I just said, I love your car, and I really, it's just something I dream of, and I'd love to know your story and hear how you got to the point where you're at. And he was a bit, I guess, taken back. He just, wait on the sidewalk, and I'll be over in a sec, because he's just on a conference call. I said, sweet. And then he got out, spent 45 minutes with me talking about, mindset and how, you're in control basically of your own destiny and your own life. So for me, that's when my life changed that day, in terms of the way I viewed things, my perspective, and really went from, blaming others or having excuses to really taking ownership of my own life. So, it's amazing. He's still my mentor to this day, and I still check in with him very, very regularly. And he gave me some books to read, which really changed my perspective and my views on things. And, didn't look at people being lucky. He looked at people working for it and how do they get to the places they get. And really that was the big shift. It's just funny how, like, my world of life would be so different if I didn't make that decision. But again, the one thing he said to me, which resonated with that day so much, was opportunities pass people every single day. It's just whether or not they're ready for them. And I had these opportunities pass me every single day, but I wasn't ready for them, and I didn't make that move. And for some reason that day, I jumped out of my car and I knocked on that window, and it changed my life forever. So it's funny. It's funny how things work like that.
That's a pretty unique story, dude. It seems like it's one of those things you're driving off and like, when you say you're going to regret this for the rest of your life, it's like an out-of-body experience that's just turned your car around and gone and knocked on the window. Hey. Mate, kudos to you. Not many people would do that. Not many people have the balls to do that, to take life by the scruff of the hands and take a chance. And seems like you've developed a pretty cool relationship that most would probably kill for. But, it's about taking that risk and putting yourself out there to gain that sort of wisdom.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, for people watching, like, I'm not the most, at that point, I wasn't the most confident person. I wasn't like, that wasn't natural to me. I got a lot of anxiety doing it, and it was very, very unlike me. But anyone can do it. And, I think people like that are successful, that, they like helping people. So if you take that jump and you actually take that risk, they really do appreciate it. This guy that turned out, he was, was a CEO and founder of a $1 billion company. So, crazy. I mean, that was just obviously, the wealth side of things, that's amazing. And it's an incredible journey for him. But the biggest thing I took away from that was his mindset and what, not just from a acquiring money point of view, but even towards his health, towards his relationships, towards his family, friends. That was what I really took away from that encounter.
It's a beautiful story, mate. It's one that's inspiring. I feel like I need to go knock on a Mercedes or a Lambo door right now and just say, hey, mate, can we go for a coffee? And I'm probably going to do that. I'm going to be honest. I promise you now, I'll do that at some point. And I'm going to send you my story, and hopefully it's as cool as yours. But my last question was, because what you've done, I think people would see as a tremendous risk, or going against the grain, but you're in a position where you're much happier, you're much more fulfilled, and you've taken a chance on yourself that everyone kind of didn't want you to do. But can you give, for all footballers or professional athletes out there in general who are pretty zoned in on sport, but they feel like there's more to life than what they're just doing, and they want to kind of, try some other things whilst they're either playing sport or get out of their sport. Can you give, I guess, any words of advice or wisdom to some people in those shoes right now who are thinking that way?
Yeah, I think it's still a tough one if you're still playing football or if you're still playing a sport at the highest level, because it does demand such great focus and such great commitment. So that does make it a little bit harder. Starting a venture on the side, if you can do it and manage it, that's great. If it's taking away from footy and that's your number one thing, I think that's hard, and maybe focus more just on networking and creating relationships post-footy. That would be my advice for them. But I mean, I think if I could go back to when I was playing footy, there's so many networks and relationships there that people are untapped on. On their days off, they're playing FIFA, they're playing COD, they're going to cafes, drinking coffees. Like, actually use that time to really not exploit, but just get the most out of the networks of the club, especially if you're at Melbourne, Richmond, Collingwood, all these type of clubs. Like, the people involved, and the amount they want to help the players is just astronomical. So my advice to simplify it, my advice to any players at the moment is really, make use of those networks that are available now whilst you're playing, because when you do stop, they're definitely still there. But when you're active playing, that people are so much more involved, and they want to get more involved with those active players.
Tommy Bugg, you're an inspiration, and in the words of David Beckham, mate, it doesn't matter whether you play for your club or your country, it's always 100%, and that's the way it has been, that's the way it always will be. Mantra me and you live by. But no, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the podcast, dude. This was a electric conversation, as I expected. So good. There's still so much more we can talk about, and when restrictions lift in Melbourne, we definitely have to come into the studio here that we've got brewing with Room 10 Company, just to lift the screws up more on what we can talk about, because I feel we could talk for hours on end.
No, 100%, man. I absolutely love what you're doing with the Unlaced podcast as well. I think it's terrific. You're really focusing on athletes post sport, and really helping them and tell their stories. Mate, I'm so pumped. I think you're going to do special things, and I'm looking forward to seeing it number one on the list.
That's it, mate. Manifestation, baby. That's it. Thank you, Tommy Bugg. You're a superstar.
No worries, mate.